welcome to Lenten Reflections. I'm Pastor Michele.
And I'm Pastor Kathy.
And Pastor Eliza is with us today, and she's going to share a couple of poems with us.
I would like to share with you a couple poems for our Lent reflection. The first poem is by Raymond A. Foss, titled To the Baptismal Waters. Like anyone like Christ, like those in Ephesus, those in Caesarea, coming to the baptismal waters, baptized with Christ, his living water. The Holy Spirit falling upon us, washing into us, inside us. God saturating us, living waters of life flowing within us. Growing, the Spirit moving, changing us, our lives, able like them, like Him, to speak with power, to share in words they will understand, to rise up out of the waters, reborn, changed forever, children of God, risen with Christ from the depths, the grip of death, forever to live with our brother, our loving Father. The second poem is by Reverend Sharon A. Benton, titled Waters of Love. Life begins in the waters of creation, the void, the deep, and the Spirit of God swept over the face of the waters, first creating one cell, then multiple cells, and eventually the endless numbers of intricately involved organisms that populated the earth today. And God called it good, beloved. Life begins in the waters of creation, the womb. We have all been there, floating in the watery sack of amniotic fluid. We each grow from 2 cells to multiple organs, to the wondrous, complicated being that sits in the pew next to your neighbor, you, and God call you good, beloved. Life begins in the waters of creation, the Jordan River, the place where Jesus stepped out of the waves and into his mission and ministry, growing from one word of love to multiple acts of justice, into an infinite call for each person to follow, into new life. And God called the baptismal good, and God's child beloved. The deep, the womb, the Jordan, new life begins in the waters of creation, and the new life is good, beloved.
Well, that was lovely.
It was.
Yeah. So today I am thinking a lot about water. And we pass these little bottles of baptismal water out to our friends in our congregations on Sunday. And that was really cool, wasn't it?
It was fun, yes.
I love that, and I shared with Renton that that this little bottle is so powerful because baptismal waters are abundant, living, and blessed. And you shared a tip with people you were telling me at Bryn Mawr.
Well, yes, because some people, I said you might want to soak your seeds before you planted them, so that they would plump up. And there were a couple of people who thought that it looked like an awfully small amount of water in order to soak their seeds. And I said, well, you can put that in a larger, you can pour that into a larger amount of water, and that way the whole of the water will be blessed. And you can bless your own water. You really can, by thanking God for the water and asking that this water bless the plants that are going to receive it.
Oh, I love that. That is a great tip. And so although we love to see you at church, but at the same time, you don't have to come back to church to refill your bottle. And you saw I poured, as Pastor Kathy was sharing this, I poured this into my baptismal bowl. And so it's very easy just to dip back in. Or even you can pour the whole bowl out, right?
Right.
On your
Right.
plants. Yeah. Well, I have to say that because I've been thinking about water and oh my gosh, this is I'm going to actually I'm going to just go ahead and one of the thoughts that I had on Sunday afternoon was you could even pour the water over you. You don't have to just use it with the seeds, but you can pour it over yourself if you would like. I wouldn't suggest pouring it over some unsuspecting person in your house. You could do that too, I suppose, and you could say, remember your baptism.
Good.
Don't have to come to church on baptismal Sunday for that. But I was thinking about Teresa of Avila, and I know you love the mystics as well. But I was thinking about her because she, in her book, The Book of Life, wrote about watering a garden to describe a spiritual journey. I just want to share a few of her words, of course, translated to English. And beginners must realize that in order to give delight to the Lord, they are starting to cultivate a garden on the very barren soil full of abominable weeds. Gosh, that sounds like my garden, honestly. His Majesty pulls up the weeds and plants good seeds. Now, let us keep in mind that all of this is already done by the time a soul is determined to practice prayer and has begun to make use of it. And with the help of God, we must strive like good gardeners to get these plants to grow and take pains to water them so that they don't wither, but come to bud and flower and give forth a most pleasant fragrance to provide refreshment for this Lord of ours. Then he will often come to take delight in this garden and find his joy among these virtues. I just love that, don't
It
you?
is beautiful. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I love, you are teaching a contemplative prayer class, and I love how she is talking about watering the garden is, akin to our prayer life and how we, first get started with prayer and what our garden looks like. But I love that idea, and then God plants good seeds in this soil, but then we baptismal waters, right? We're watering, and part of how we do that is through our prayer life.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so she talks about this in 4 stages, and we don't have to go through each and every stage, but in the first stage, she describes that it feels really laborious. It's like taking maybe a bottle like this and dipping it in the water and taking it out to the garden and pouring, one bottle at a time. But eventually, after some time, in the second stage, we start feeling more connected with God. And as we're doing that, by the third stage, we're doing very little work, and God is watering our soul. It's like irrigation coming in, so you don't have to deal with this anymore. And then by the end, the fourth stage is union with God, and I love that. I just kind of wonder. You're really good at thinking about spiritual practices too, ways that we might think about water and prayer and God and reconnecting with God.
Well, it reminds me of when you were talking about laborious prayer. when I assigned praying the hours to one of my classes. And this class was made up of people who were pastors and chaplains. And you would think that pastors and chaplains have a very active prayer life. But they were also in a doctor of ministry program, which means that they were doing all of their work plus going to school. And so my job was to try to help them to continue to pray and not lose that part of their prayer life. So I assigned several different prayer practices, and one was praying the hours.
Oh my gosh.
And praying the hours is kind of a hard one because
Yeah.
it means that you have to pray early in the morning, mid-morning, noon, sometime in the later evening around
Right.
dinner time, and then at bedtime.
Right.
And there are many forms of that, many resources of patterns of prayer that you can go through at each of those times of the day. And it is the hardest one. And I told people it was the hardest one. And the feedback that I got was, oh my goodness, this is too hard. How can we do that? But one of the students happened to be a chaplain in a hospital. And she was mentioning that to one of the doctors at the hospital. And he said, well, you probably wash your hands 100 times during the day. Why don't you pray when you wash your hands?
Ooh.
And she came back and said, that was so amazing. Every time I finished with praying with a person or visiting one of the patients, I would go to the sink and I'd wash my hands, and I would remember to pray, or remember that I belong to God. And we don't always have to use words when we pray. Sometimes it's just remembering that we're in God's presence, and that's prayer. It's prayer just to remember that we are in God's presence. Father Lawrence called that, or Brother Lawrence called that, practicing the presence of God. And so one of the things that we can do is every time we touch water, we can remember that we are beloved. We can remember that we are baptized. So whether we're showering or doing the dishes or watering the plants, I used to pray while I watered the plants. All of those things, yes, all of those times can be not just a reminder that we have to pray to find words, but that God is in us, that we are beloved, that God is with us, that we're always in the presence of God.
I love that. And and hopefully we do wash our hands a lot during the day, right?
Yes.
And we have to wash dishes sometimes, or
Bathe children or grandchildren, yes.
I have a dog that needs to be bathed.
There
but
you are.
I think he's hoping I will forget. But I will remind my dog when he is being bathed that he also is a beloved child of God.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. That is great. Well, I'm wondering, do you have a prayer that you can
I
pray us
do.
out with?
So yes, I brought a reflection from Bob Holmes. Enter into the quiet, that threshold of stillness. In this living moment, take your time with eternity. Breathe it in. Feel the quickening, the awakening of life coursing through your being. In this living place, be. Just be, with your whole heart and being, soaking in your spirit, learning afresh to dwell. Herein lies our restoration and rest in God. It is new every morning, like fresh manna from heaven, like a breath prayer of gratitude. We receive this living presence of grace, love, and peace as we begin again.
Thank you so much. And we're so glad you could join us. And enjoy your bottles and enjoy your water. And remember, as Pastor Kathy said, you can even bless more and enjoy all of the ways that baptismal water is flowing in and through us. and how we're sharing that water with the world. We'll see you next week.